Welcome back to the Life with the Browns. Two words are now hanging over Kody and Robyn Brown like a federal indictment waiting to be unsealed: mortgage fraud. And make no mistake, this isn't just internet gossip or another fleeting fan theory. This allegation detonated inside the sister wives fandom like a live grenade, and the fallout is still ripping through everything the Browns spent years trying to protect. After more than a decade of carefully curated storylines, financial smokescreens, and a plural marriage system that seemed to bend whenever it became inconvenient, the Brown family is suddenly facing a level of scrutiny they never imagined would turn inward. And according to multiple sources, the person who struck the match wasn't a government auditor or a bank investigator. It was Meri Brown, the original legal wife, the woman who spent decades sidelined, emotionally erased, and publicly framed as expendable by the very people now scrambling to survive the consequences. Insiders describe the current atmosphere surrounding Cody and Robyn as radioactive. One source didn't sugarcoat it at all, saying the couple is in full-blown panic mode, turning on everyone around them while refusing to accept any responsibility themselves. The stress, the paranoia, the fear, it's all reportedly spilling over behind closed doors. And here's why. The allegations tied to their Flagstaff property dealings are not minor clerical mistakes or innocent misunderstandings. We're talking about potential falsification of marital status, misrepresentation of income, and strategic exploitation of legal gray areas created by their unconventional family structure, actions that, if proven, could rise to the level of federal crimes. Let that sink in. The same family that built an entire television empire on the promise of honesty and transparency, inviting America into their homes to show the real lives of a plural family, may have been concealing financial deceptions stretching back years. The irony is breathtaking. Kody Brown spent over a decade on national television lecturing viewers about morality, principles, and the legitimacy of his lifestyle. He positioned himself as the patriarch of a loving, unified household, constantly defending polygamy as not only ethical, but misunderstood. Yet behind the scenes, that very structure may have been weaponized for financial gain in ways that would make any mortgage lender recoil. You cannot claim to be legally single on financial documents while simultaneously pooling income from multiple spouses to qualify for homes you could never afford alone. That isn't clever bookkeeping. That isn't a loophole. That is fraud. What makes this situation even more explosive is the paper trail. Die-hard Sister Wives fans, many of whom have been tracking the Browns' movements for years with forensic precision, have been combing through public property records in Flagstaff. And what they've uncovered paints a picture Kody and Robyn never wanted exposed. Multiple properties purchased under circumstances that raise serious red flags. Applications that allegedly contradict public claims about income, assets, and marital reality. A pattern that doesn't point to a one-time error, but to years of coordinated behavior across multiple transactions. One fan investigator summed it up perfectly. The documents tell a story that directly contradicts the narrative the Browns sold to viewers for years. But this reckoning didn't happen overnight. The pieces have been sliding into place for months, and Meri's role in accelerating this exposure adds an emotional betrayal that insiders say pushed Robyn into what can only be described as a full emotional crash-out. Sources claim Robyn feels blindsided, furious, and terrified, convinced that Meri knew exactly what she was doing when certain information surfaced. That raises the question everyone is asking: was this accidental or calculated? And the answer to that question may determine what little remains of the Brown family once the dust settles. From the very first season, fans sensed something didn't add up. How does a family this large, with one primary income earner and multiple stay-at-home wives, afford massive homes in multiple states? How do they maintain separate households, fund weddings, support adult children, and live comfortably on camera without serious financial gymnastics? Those suspicions simmered quietly for over a decade. Now they're boiling over. The legal framework of the Brown family always existed in a deliberately maintained gray zone. Kody was legally married to Meri for years, making her the only wife with recognized legal standing. Janelle, Christine, and later Robyn existed as spiritual wives, emotionally bound, but legally invisible. This wasn't accidental. It was strategic. By keeping only one legal marriage in place, the family could position other wives as single mothers for tax purposes, benefits, and yes, mortgage qualifications. One former associate of the family described the setup as a system engineered to extract maximum financial benefit while minimizing accountability. Then came 2014. Kody divorced Meri to legally marry Robyn, publicly framing the move as a noble sacrifice so he could adopt Robyn's children from her previous marriage. Casual viewers accepted the explanation. But those watching closely noticed something else. With that signature, every legal and financial advantage of being Kody's wife transferred directly to Robyn. Property rights, financial protections, lending power. Meri was praised for her selflessness. But insiders now suggest the move had far less to do with love and far more to do with money. The Flagstaff era marked a dramatic escalation. After fleeing Las Vegas under the pretense of safety concerns and shifting cultural attitudes, the Browns purchased land at Coyote Pass and rapidly began acquiring individual homes. The speed, the structure, the funding, none of it sat right with fans then. And now, under the harsh light of public records and growing allegations, it's beginning to look far more calculated than chaotic. And if investigators start asking the same questions fans have been asking for years, this story may be heading somewhere far darker than reality television ever intended. The price tags alone told a story that never quite lined up. These weren't modest family homes or cautious investments. We're talking about serious money, properties hovering near the $900,000 mark, acquired during a period when Kody Brown's only clearly visible income stream was the television show itself. Fans ran the numbers again and again, and every time they did, the same conclusion surfaced. The math did not math. Unless there were financial arrangements happening behind the scenes, arrangements viewers were never meant to see. Almost immediately, fans began documenting inconsistencies. How could Robyn and Kody qualify for such a massive mortgage while publicly presenting an income profile that simply wouldn't satisfy most lenders? Where was the documented income? Where were the assets? And why did the explanations offered on the show never quite answer those questions? What has since emerged from public records is deeply unsettling. According to reports circulating among investigators and finance-savvy fans, mortgage applications connected to the Flagstaff properties may have contained inaccurate marital status declarations, potentially listing single status while simultaneously benefiting from pooled family resources. Income disclosures may have been inflated, selectively reported, or outright misrepresented. The tangled structure of spiritual marriages combined with shared finances created a perfect storm, a system that allowed money to flow freely within the family while appearing legally isolated on paper. Mortgage professionals familiar with these practices have been blunt. This isn't a gray area. This is textbook mortgage fraud. And lenders are not known for letting these things slide, especially when discrepancies surface years later and involve high-value properties. At this point, fans aren't asking if something improper occurred. The mounting evidence suggests that question has already been answered. What everyone wants to know now is how deep it goes, how long it lasted, and who ultimately signed off on the decisions that may have placed the entire family at risk. And once again, the trail leads back to Meri. For 30 years, Meri Brown built a life around Kody, legally, emotionally, and spiritually. She was there before the show, before the fame, before the money. And she was the one who watched Kody hand over his legal commitment to Robyn, then slowly but deliberately erase her from the family's inner circle. The idea that Meri played a role in exposing these alleged financial improprieties feels poetic to some and devastating to others. Whether her involvement was intentional or incidental remains up for debate. But the timing and pattern suggest something far more complex than coincidence. The exposure didn't begin with a dramatic tell-all or a leaked document. It started quietly, almost invisibly. Meri's social media activity, long dismissed as post-separation venting, now looks very different in hindsight. Cryptic posts about truth inevitably surfacing. Subtle references to karma, accountability, and consequences. Vague comments about financial fairness that seem designed to provoke questions without ever providing direct answers. At the time, Fans shrugged it off. Now, many believe Meri was leaving breadcrumbs. Sources claim that Meri provided specific information to certain individuals, enough to point them toward public property records and financial filings that were already available, but never closely examined. Whether she handed over documents, confirmed existing suspicions, or simply nudged investigators in the right direction remains unclear. What is clear, according to multiple insiders, is that without Meri's involvement, the connections between the various property transactions and their potentially fraudulent foundations may never have been made. One source close to Meri put it starkly: she finally decided she was done protecting people who never protected her. And the timing of this reckoning matters. Meri officially separated from the family after years of being marginalized, publicly humiliated, and emotionally abandoned by Kody. She watched her loyalty be repaid with isolation, her sacrifices rewritten as inconveniences, her pain minimized while others benefited from the very system she helped uphold. If this exposure truly traces back to Meri, it raises an uncomfortable possibility, one that Cody and Robyn reportedly cannot stop fixating on: that the woman they sidelined, dismissed, and underestimated may be the very person who dismantled the illusion they worked so hard to maintain. And if that's true, then this story isn't just about money. It's about consequences. While remaining technically tied to the family for years, Meri watched resources flow steadily in one direction, toward Robyn, while she was still expected to contribute financially without receiving emotional support, practical partnership, or even basic respect in return. She stayed. She paid. She endured. And slowly, quietly, resentment took root. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It built invisibly, layer by layer, until something finally broke. Whether that breaking point came from a single humiliating moment or from decades of being minimized hardly matters now. The result was the same. Meri stopped staying silent. Fans who have followed her journey closely noticed the shift almost immediately. Over the past year, Meri's social media tone changed. Posts that once felt resigned and melancholy became sharper, more deliberate. She began liking comments openly critical of Cody and Robyn. She shared quotes about betrayal, consequences, and accountability, messages that seemed to carry double meanings for anyone paying attention. One post, in particular, now feels chilling in hindsight. It referenced the idea that secrets have a way of surfacing and that those who keep them should prepare for the fallout. At the time, many assumed she was referencing her long-ago catfishing scandal. Looking back now, that assumption feels painfully naive. Which brings us to the question haunting this entire situation: intent. Did Meri deliberately expose potential mortgage fraud as a form of retaliation against the family that discarded her? Or did the truth slip out accidentally, shared in moments when her guard was down and trust was misplaced? Those close to her are divided. Some insist Meri would never intentionally cause legal harm to anyone, regardless of how deeply she was hurt. Others point to decades of accumulated grievances and argue that she knew exactly what she was doing and simply chose to stop protecting people who never protected her. And let's be brutally honest for a moment. After everything Cody and Robyn put her through, would anyone truly blame her if this exposure wasn't accidental? What is clear is that when Robyn learned information connecting their property dealings had gone public, her reaction was immediate and explosive. Insiders don't mince words when describing Robyn Brown's response. Unhinged is the term repeated over and over. The woman who spent years cultivating an image as the gentle, reasonable, peacekeeping wife reportedly showed an entirely different side the moment her financial security came under threat. Multiple sources describe a complete emotional collapse, rage giving way to panic, panic turning into frantic attempts at damage control. One person who spoke with someone present during the initial fallout called it a meltdown unlike anything they had ever witnessed. The carefully polished persona Robyn presented on camera evaporated instantly. According to those close to the situation, Robyn's first instinct was to blame Cody. She allegedly accused him of years of reckless financial decision-making, demanding to know why safeguards weren't in place, why vulnerabilities were allowed to grow unchecked, and why no one anticipated that a discarded ex-wife might eventually expose their arrangements. The confrontation between them was reportedly so intense that neighbors could hear raised voices spilling out into the night, accusations flying, nerves shredded, and long-simmering tensions finally boiling over. For a couple that has consistently portrayed themselves as the stable core while the other marriages collapsed, this private chaos tells a very different story. But Robyn's fury didn't stop with Kody. Sources say she attempted to contact Meri directly. Accounts differ on whether any communication actually occurred. Some claim there was a heated phone call in which Robyn accused Meri of deliberate sabotage and even hinted at legal action. Others insist Meri refused all contact, leaving Robyn spiraling without the confrontation she desperately wanted. Either way, whatever remained of their already fractured relationship is now beyond repair. What makes Robyn's reaction especially revealing is how sharply it contradicts years of on-camera behavior. She has always positioned herself as the innocent party, the woman who tried to keep the peace, who simply wanted to love Kody without causing harm. But when faced with potential legal consequences, that facade cracked instantly. Insiders describe a woman consumed by self-preservation, concerned not with whether the allegations had merit, not with how this might affect the children or the broader family, but solely with protecting assets, property, and status. One source noted something particularly damning. At no point did Robyn express concern for how this situation might impact the kids. The focus was entirely on herself and Kody, and the blame directed at Meri has been relentless. According to those familiar with private conversations, Robyn has reportedly told confidants that Meri's actions are motivated purely by jealousy and spite, that this is revenge, not truth. But as more details continue to surface, that narrative is becoming harder and harder to maintain. Because jealousy doesn't create paper trails, and spite doesn't falsify documents. What's unfolding now is no longer about personal grudges. It's about accountability. And the consequences may be far bigger than any of them ever imagined. She has reportedly framed the exposure as an attack on her children's security, conveniently sidestepping the uncomfortable reality that any instability would stem from the alleged fraud itself, not from the person who exposed it. Privately, the narrative Robyn is pushing casts her as the victim of a vindictive ex-wife, rather than as someone who may now be facing consequences for years of questionable financial behavior. Let me translate that plainly. Robyn is more upset about being caught than about what may have been done. According to those close to the situation, the emotional crash hasn't been brief or contained. It's dragged on for weeks. Friends and family describe Robyn cycling between explosive anger and deep, immobilizing depression. She is reportedly struggling to process the gravity of what's unfolding, becoming increasingly isolated and trusting fewer and fewer people with any details about the crisis. Her social media presence has all but vanished, a sharp contrast to her previously curated image, and insiders believe that silence is intentional. She knows that anything she posts now could be dissected, archived, and used against her. The woman who once appeared so confident in her position as Kody's only remaining wife is now reportedly questioning everything, including whether that position was ever as secure as she believed. Meanwhile, the pressure cooker that is Kody and Robyn's marriage has been heating up for years. The fraud allegations didn't create the tension, they ignited it. Sources describe a household thick with hostility, where financial stress and legal fear bleed into every interaction. The couple viewers once watched when the competition for Kody's attention is now realizing that the prize may come with federal charges attached. Money issues are nothing new for the Browns. Throughout the run of Sister Wives, financial stress was a constant undertone, from the chaotic exit out of Las Vegas to the disastrous Coyote Pass purchase to the endless juggling of resources between households. But those problems, serious as they were, never carried the specter of prison time. This situation is different. Legal experts reviewing the publicly available information have suggested that if fraud is proven, both Kody and Robyn could face severe consequences. And when the stakes shift from embarrassment to incarceration, everything about a relationship changes. Insiders report that arguments between Cody and Robyn have become increasingly vicious, with both parties trying to establish who bears primary responsibility. Robyn allegedly insists she trusted Cody to handle financial matters properly and should not be held accountable for decisions he made. Cody, in turn, reportedly argues that Robyn was a full participant in the property purchases and cannot plausibly claim ignorance. The result? A vicious, circular blame game. One source described their communication as two people simultaneously positioning themselves as the primary victim, while quietly preparing to throw the other under the bus, if it becomes necessary. Unsurprisingly, fan theories about what Robyn knew and when have exploded online. Some believe she was intentionally kept in the dark, shielded from the specifics of mortgage applications. Others point to her involvement in family finances and her business background as evidence that she understood far more than she now admits. The truth likely lives in the murky space in between. Willful ignorance, if proven, doesn't offer legal protection. As any attorney will tell you, not asking questions because you don't want the answers is not a defense. The strain is reportedly becoming visible even to casual observers. Rare public appearances show stiff body language and forced interactions. The once tightly coordinated social media presence has fractured. Friends say Robyn has made vague comments about regretting certain decisions, without clarifying which ones. The fairy tale ending she orchestrated, becoming Cody's only legal wife, now feels less like a victory and more like the opening chapter of a nightmare. Let that sink in. She fought to be the last wife standing. And now that position may require her to share a defense attorney with the man who promised her everything. What makes this moment particularly striking is how far it is from where Cody and Robyn expected to be. They envisioned a future free from the drama of the other wives, focused on their children and their relationship. Instead, they're reportedly consulting lawyers, reviewing old documents, and mentally preparing for scenarios that include criminal prosecution. The irony has not been lost on fans, or on the women Cody discarded. Christine Brown is thriving, and that contrast is impossible to ignore. Since leaving Cody, Christine has launched successful business ventures, found a loving and supportive partner, rebuilt deep connections with her children, and visibly flourished. She radiates the ease of someone who escaped a suffocating environment and reclaimed her autonomy. That glow stands in stark opposition to the chaos now engulfing Cody and Robyn. And perhaps that is the final, bitter twist in this unfolding saga. The wives who walked away are finding peace, while the couple who won may be left defending everything they tried so desperately to protect. Her social media tells its own quiet but powerful story. Genuine smiles, family gatherings, laughter that looks unforced, and the unmistakable glow of a woman who is finally living on her own terms. And as the fraud allegations swirl around her former husband and his favored wife, Christine's silence has been deafening. Sources close to Christine say she has been following the unfolding situation with what one friend described as vindicated fascination. After years of being marginalized, undervalued, and financially squeezed within the family, watching Cody and Robyn face real scrutiny reportedly feels like a form of cosmic justice. Christine has allegedly told Confidants that she always suspected the finances didn't add up, but while she was still inside the family structure, she felt powerless to challenge anything. Now, as those same arrangements are being examined under a harsh public spotlight, Christine feels her instincts were right all along. And she doesn't need to say a word for that truth to land. Janelle Brown's response has been quieter, but no less revealing. The former wife, who long prided herself on being the family's financial brain, has reportedly taken swift, deliberate steps to distance herself completely from the Flagstaff property dealings. According to insiders, Janelle has consulted her own legal counsel to ensure that financial decisions made during her marriage cannot be traced back to her in ways that would create liability. One source noted that Janelle is being extremely careful to establish a clear boundary. She was not involved in these specific transactions, did not sign the applications, and had no knowledge of any alleged irregularities. Every move appears intentional, calculated, protective. Naturally, Fans have begun asking whether Christine or Janelle could face legal exposure due to the family's long and complicated financial history. Legal analysts suggest the answer is largely no. Unless either woman was a signatory on the specific mortgage applications or directly participated in misrepresentations, their liability would be minimal. In a bitter twist of irony, the very spiritual wife arrangement that once disadvantaged them may now serve as their legal shield. They were not legal spouses, not co-signers, not formally bound to Kody in ways that would make them responsible for his financial decisions. The marginalization that hurt them then may be protecting them now. Evidence of the ex-wives' deliberate distancing is everywhere for those paying attention. Neither Christine nor Janelle has commented publicly on the fraud allegations, but their silence is strategic, not passive. They've stopped engaging with content related to Cody and Robyn. Old photos featuring the embattled couple have quietly disappeared. Their online presence suggests a clear message: that chapter is closed. Friends say both women are focused entirely on their own futures, with no interest in being dragged into the Brown family's implosion, not even as spectators. And the contrast couldn't be sharper. Christine and Janelle were once criticized for abandoning the family. In reality, they escaped what is now beginning to look like a financial house of cards, built on questionable practices and propped up by secrecy. The wives who walked away are thriving.
Free.
Untangled. The wife who stayed and benefited most from the system is now facing potential legal consequences. Sometimes, the universe has a way of delivering exactly what people earn. And longtime Sister Wives viewers are watching this reversal of fortune with barely concealed satisfaction. Because if there's one thing Sister Wives fans excel at beyond loyalty, it's investigation. These are not casual viewers skimming headlines. These are dedicated digital detectives, people who have spent years cataloging every property purchase, cross-referencing public records, dissecting timelines, and analyzing social media for hidden clues. When the fraud allegations surfaced, these amateur forensic accountants were already armed with years of documentation. The investigation gained serious momentum on Reddit threads and Facebook groups devoted entirely to Sister Wives analysis. Users began sharing property records from Coconino County, highlighting purchase prices, listed owners, and suspicious timing between transactions. Even with mortgage details partially protected, enough public information exists to raise immediate red flags. And as more eyes turn toward those records, one thing is becoming increasingly clear: this story isn't fading. It's just beginning. One particularly meticulous investigator took things even further, compiling a detailed spreadsheet that compared declared income from known tax-related disclosures with the staggering values of the properties being purchased. The conclusion was blunt and damning. In their words, it was an impossible financial equation, numbers that simply could not coexist without misrepresentation somewhere along the line. And that spreadsheet was just the beginning. What followed was a crowdsourced investigation, so thorough it bordered on professional. Fans uncovered discrepancies between what the Browns claimed on camera about their living situations and what official records actually showed. Properties appeared to be purchased through arrangements that seemed intentionally designed to blur or obscure true ownership. Rapid refinancing patterns emerged, moves that suggested equity extraction strategies that might not survive even basic lender scrutiny. One investigator, who happens to work professionally in mortgage lending, stated plainly that if even half of what these documents suggest is accurate, the violations would be severe enough that any reasonable lender would pursue them aggressively. Online communities quickly evolved into full-scale evidence repositories. Screenshots of social media posts were archived before they could be deleted. Property transfer records were downloaded, saved, and cross-referenced. Old interviews and podcast appearances where Cody and Robyn discussed finances were transcribed line by line and analyzed for inconsistencies. Some fan groups went so far as to build full wikis, living databases tracking every known financial transaction associated with the Brown family. The level of organization has been astonishing. And according to those deeply embedded in these communities, they believe they've barely scratched the surface. This raises the question that now looms over everything. Can fan pressure turn into real legal action? While ordinary citizens can't bring fraud charges themselves, they can, and reportedly have, filed formal complaints. Multiple sources claim that information has been submitted to the FBI's mortgage fraud tip line, Arizona state regulators, and even directly to lending institutions involved in the Browns' property purchases. Whether those agencies act remains to be seen, but one thing is undeniable. Any investigator who chooses to look will not be starting from scratch. The evidence is already waiting. This phenomenon, fans transforming into investigators, reflects a larger cultural shift. Audiences are no longer content to passively consume reality television. They participate. They analyze. They hold people accountable. The Browns built their brand on transparency. They invited cameras into their homes, their marriages, their finances, and asked viewers to accept their version of reality. Now, those same viewers are using that information to construct a story the family never intended to tell. And here's where the situation turns truly serious. Mortgage fraud is not a slap-on-the-wrist offense. It is a federal crime, and prosecutors take it especially seriously when it involves high-value properties and apparent patterns of deception. If the allegations circulating prove accurate, the consequences could reshape Kody and Robyn's lives in ways their reality TV fame will not soften. Federal mortgage fraud convictions can carry penalties of up to 30 years in prison and fines reaching $1 million per violation. While first-time offenders rarely receive maximum sentences, even reduced outcomes are devastating. 5 years in federal prison is not uncommon. Civil forfeiture of properties obtained through fraudulent means is standard. Financial restitution to lenders can follow defendants for life. These are not scare tactics. These are routine outcomes in prosecuted cases. And history offers a sobering comparison. Teresa and Joe Giudice of Real Housewives of New Jersey fame were convicted of bank and wire fraud involving falsified mortgage applications. Joe served over 3 years in prison before being deported. Teresa served nearly a year herself. Their case proved that reality television notoriety offers no immunity and may actually increase scrutiny. As one legal analyst noted, prosecutors often favor high-profile cases because they serve as public deterrents. That parallel has not been lost on observers watching Cody and Robyn. Complicating matters further is TLC's potential exposure. Television production companies often provide advances, guaranteed payments, and complex compensation structures. If those payments were misrepresented on mortgage applications, either inflated to qualify for loans or concealed to appear less wealthy, the network itself could be pulled into the investigation. That possibility alone gives TLC strong incentive to distance itself. Industry insiders say networks have little tolerance for being dragged into legal proceedings that might expose their financial arrangements during discovery. And Sister Wives was already on shaky ground before this scandal broke. Ratings have declined as the plural marriage dissolved into a single remaining couple. Without the other wives, the narrative tension that sustained the show has largely evaporated. Now add fraud allegations. Sources suggest TLC executives are actively weighing whether continuing the program is worth the reputational risk. The income stream Cody and Robyn have relied on for years may disappear precisely when they need it most, to fund an expensive legal defense. Because regardless of whether charges are ultimately filed, the investigation alone will be brutal. Mortgage fraud defense can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Investigations can drag on for years. And unlike private citizens, their situation will play out under relentless public scrutiny. Their children will grow up with these allegations permanently attached to their family name. And then there's the court of public opinion. It requires no warrants, no burden of proof, no presumption of innocence. And it has already rendered its verdict. Scroll through any Sister Wives comment section, forum, or social media thread, and you'll find near-universal condemnation. The couple who once positioned themselves as the survivors of the Brown family collapse are now viewed as the architects of its moral downfall. The family that preached transparency appears to have been drowning in secrets. And now those secrets are surfacing. The narrative has completely reversed. Christine's departure looks like wisdom, not abandonment. Janelle's distance appears prudent, not cold. Meri's years of mistreatment feel even more unjust when viewed through the lens of a household allegedly propped up by deception. The irony is almost poetic, if it weren't so destructive. Robyn fought relentlessly to become Kody's primary focus, pushing other wives to the margins and consolidating resources around herself and her children. She achieved everything she wanted, and that achievement may now place her at the center of a legal reckoning the marginalized wives will entirely escape. She wanted to be the center of Kody's world. Now she's the center of an investigation. Be careful what you wish for. Kody's role in all of this reflects the same fundamental dishonesty that defined his patriarchy from the start. He demanded loyalty, he didn't return. Sacrifice, he didn't reciprocate. Rules that applied to everyone but him until suddenly they applied very directly. The question viewers can't stop debating remains. Did Meri expose them deliberately, or was this truly accidental? Did decades of resentment finally spill over into calculated revelation, or did the truth slip out through carelessness that only appears intentional? In the end, that question may not matter. Either way, the truth emerged. And now Kody and Robyn must face what that truth reveals. What happens next is uncertain, but some outcomes feel inevitable. The Brown family, as viewers knew it, is finished. The remaining relationship between Kody and Robyn may not survive the pressure ahead. Their children will grapple with the fallout for years. And millions of viewers who invested over a decade in this family's story will watch the final chapters unfold with the kind of fascination only real accountability can bring. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Meri knew exactly what she was doing, or was this truly an accident? Share your theory. Because this story is far from over, and the truth, it seems, still has more to reveal.